Conor McGregor stunned the entire MMA world when he publicly backed Paddy Pimblett for UFC 324. And yes, despite all the chaos that followed, Paddy still ended up in the interim title fight while higher-ranked contenders were left choking on dust.
Please tell me that this is some sort of sick joke. Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje for the interim title? Ladies and gentlemen, what you are seeing right now is Dana White's ego and personal vendetta getting in the way of the sport we love and who should be fighting who. It is a travesty that Arman Tsarukyan is not fighting for the belt. Hey, listen, I got nothing against Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje. They're great fighters and maybe they could build their way up to a rightful title shot. But Arman Tsarukyan has to be fighting for the interim belt.
McGregor's announcement detonated social media instantly, but here's the real twist. That single tweet triggered a chain reaction that reshaped the lightweight division and set off a war between merit, popularity, and pure UFC politics. And in 30 seconds, I'm revealing the backstage detail that convinced Dana White to greenlight Paddy's leap up the rankings.
The lightweight division is so fun. Back in England, we have Paddy Pimblett. I personally would love to see that fight. He's similar to you in that he's a polarizing figure. Love him or hate him, he brings it.
He's a good kid, Paddy. The Scousers, you gotta love the Scousers. You know, my father was born in Liverpool. One side of my family is from there. So I got a lot of love for that part of the world.
As the shockwaves from McGregor's endorsement rolled across the MMA universe, the build-up to UFC 324 hit absolute meltdown mode, because ever since Ilia Topuria grabbed the belt in June, every contender with a pulse started clawing at the number 1 spot.
Ilia or Paddy? I mean, the fight not happening. It's Justin or Paddy now. Paddy got to get past Justin. Justin a tough fight, bro. I don't know. A lot of people sleeping on Justin on the Paddy fight, which just makes me ridiculous.
Justin Gaethje escalated the madness by dropping a career-threatening ultimatum, warning the UFC that if he didn't get the next shot, he'd walk away from the sport entirely. Paddy Pimblett weaponized his personal feud with Topuria, hoping their lingering hostility would push him past every other hungry contender waiting in line.
Arman Tsarukyan disappointed with Paddy Pimblett getting title shot. Arman Tsarukyan is still optimistic about getting a title fight in the future after the UFC announced Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje for the interim belt. Patience and hard work will penetrate everything. Make it make sense. Tsarukyan also left a clown emoji under the UFC's post. Tsarukyan recently said that he wouldn't even be surprised if Pimblett got the title shot over him.
Would you be surprised if Paddy Pimblett would get title shot earlier than you?
No.
Thank you.
And here's your first big call to keep watching moment in about 20 seconds. I'm dropping the exact reason the UFC's decision left even the top contenders speechless behind closed doors.
This is what Paddy posted. Where's Arman crying? You said Arman was crying? Oh. That's childish, man. That is childish. That is so snake.
Pimblett and Gaethje may have celebrated when the UFC made the match official, but fans erupted with fury across every platform. They couldn't believe Pimblett was catapulted from number 8 to the top 5 with only one recent win and zero activity since beating Michael Chandler. To his supporters, that climb was earned through charisma and star power. To his critics, it was a slap in the face to the entire ranking system, and no one felt the slap harder than Arman Tsarukyan, the man who did everything right, only to be shoved aside like he didn't exist. Stay locked in, because I'm about to reveal the exact moment Tsarukyan realized he'd been skipped, and it gets ugly.
Arman's a very good fighter, but no one cares about him, you know what I mean? People just look at him and think, yeah, you yourself for fighting Islam, you talk a big game but you don't back it up. But everyone knows Justin Gaethje's a banger, you know what I mean? Everyone knows that if you're fighting Justin Gaethje, you're gonna have a fight. So and he's a legend, you know what I mean? Arman isn't. So I'd love to fight another legend than Justin Gaethje.
Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett should not be for an interim title. So it was announced that Justin and Paddy will be fighting in January as UFC 324's headliner, and as much as I like this matchup, I have a problem with it being for an interim title. Because champion Ilia Topuria says he won't be fighting in the first quarter of 2026 due to personal reasons, so he expects to make his return around spring. So not only do I think that is not too long enough to warrant an interim title fight, but it also feels wrong to have this fight without Arman Tsarukyan in it. This is a belt for the third best fighter in the division division, and honestly, it may not even be for the third best when we consider fighters like Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira. This is something the UFC did to appease Justin, who has basically said he's only fighting for UFC gold, and for Paddy, who the promotion wants to see become a champion. Overall, great fight, and I'm going to side with Paddy on this one, as I think Justin is past his best days, but yeah, this should not be for an interim title. But what do you think?
Just days before the announcement, Tsarukyan walked into Qatar and clinically submitted Dan Hooker with the icy precision of a future champion. 5 straight wins, serving as backup for Topuria versus Oliveira. Zero drama, maximum consistency. He did everything the UFC ever claimed they wanted from a title contender, but suddenly none of it mattered. It seemed like the UFC's memory was long enough to remember his late withdrawal from UFC 311, yet somehow short enough to forget every elite performance that came after.
Said to the public, it is not as important as an interim title fight. An interim title fight, by the way, that does not feature a #1 contender. Because the #1 contender at 155 pounds is a guy named Arman Tsarukyan, and he's not involved in this fight. And of course, the champion Ilia Topuria is not involved in this fight. This is a makeshift fight. This is as prestigious as a BMF title. God bless. I said I wanted to see Paddy fight for the belt. God bless. I said, Justin, I think you need to win a couple more. He said he was going to retire unless he got a title fight. I guess he's not retiring. He's fighting for an interim title. But this is a bogus fight. And it's insane to me that it is headlining over Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. On paper, Paddy versus Justin, if Paddy wasn't fighting Ilia and Ilia's supposed to fight Arman, on paper, Paddy versus Justin is a fine fight to determine the #1 contender to fight Ilia or Arman. Ilia won that belt back in June. I don't even think you need an interim title fight. Honestly, it should have been the co-main event, 5-round, #1 contender fight, Ilia versus Arman, second half of the year. What's the problem with that? And now what you just said, because he reiterated this in the Instagram live, the winner of this fight is going to fight Ilia. What happens to Arman? Arman's going to have to fight who? What is going on? What does Arman Tsarukyan have to do to get a shot at the belt now?
When Pimblett versus Gaethje for the interim belt dropped, Tsarukyan's frustration exploded across social media, and fans backed him instantly. In a moment, I'm going to reveal Pimblett's exact response to Tsarukyan, and it made the rivalry even more personal. As fans blasted the UFC for bending the rankings like wet cardboard, Pimblett added gasoline to the fire by taking a direct shot at Tsarukyan. For months, Tsarukyan had said Pimblett was hype over substance, a star manufactured by popularity.
And he's not even next, apparently. Now, of course, everything could change. Nothing really means anything. They make up the rules as they go along. But to put Justin and Paddy in the interim title slot and then have the winner of that fight Ilia is insane to me. And worse than that, because we have seen interim title fights that have felt a little fugazi. I cannot believe that they are headlining this card with that fight. And I cannot believe that you have Kayla versus Amanda Nunes, which some people may say is the biggest and most significant women's title fight of all time. I'm not going to forget about Nunes versus Cyborg. I'm not going to forget about Cyborg versus Genia. I'm not going to forget about all of Ronda Rousey's fights, Miesha Tate, Bethe Correia, Alexis Davis, on and on it goes. I'm not going to ignore Holly Holm, of course, the Nunes fight. I'm not even going to forget about Holly Holm versus Miesha Tate back at UFC 196, UFC 200, Nunes versus Tate, all that and then some. Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes is in that discussion, and when you factor in the return of Nunes, and you factor in the ATT storyline, teammates turn rivals, how in the world are you going to headline an interim title fight over that one? How are you going to put that beneath an interim title fight? And an interim title fight, once again, that does not feature the #1 contender. I mean, it's if I'm Nunes and Harrison, I'm happy, I'm getting paid, I'm fighting the UFC. I'm deep down insulted. I'm deep down insulted that they think this less of.
So when the interim fight became official, Pimblett fired back with a mocking jab aimed straight at him, signaling that he wasn't just taking the spotlight, he was defending it with arrogance and ambition. And yet, despite all the noise, Paddy didn't care, because Paddy Pimblett has a dream that doesn't just bend the rules, it smashes them. And in a few lines, I'll reveal why his dream is bigger than the title and why it terrifies traditional contenders. Paddy Pimblett's true obsession isn't the belt, it's walking out at Anfield Stadium in front of Liverpool, headlining a historic event in the heart of his city. For him, fighting at Anfield is bigger than gold, bigger than legacy, bigger than even becoming champion. It's the moment he wants his entire career to be remembered for, and while the title might define his resume, Anfield defines his identity. But while Paddy was dreaming, the MMA world was tearing the UFC's decision apart, and no one was louder than Ariel Helwani.
Obviously, he knows he's fighting in about 6 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks, whatever it is. So the man's ready, right? And he could be an interim champion of the world. Now, we know an interim champion basically means the #1 contender. But if Paddy can pull it off, unbelievable. That'll be 4 champs, 2 interims and 2 legit, well 3 legit now with Tom being promoted from the UK that have become champions. And for Justin Gaethje, this is the final go. This is the final crack of the whip. The man's had 2 title fights in the past, Charles Oliveira to Khabib Nurmagomedov, and now he gets to go up against Paddy Pimblett. Now talking about the matchup, of course it is an easier fight for Justin than what it is against Khabib Nurmagomedov, one of the greatest of all time. Islam Makhachev, the current pound for pound, and according to many people, a man that is surpassing Khabib Nurmagomedov, right? So in that regard, it is an easier matchup. Will Paddy be able to take him down? Will he dance around the octagon? Yes, he will. Will he try and replicate the game plan of Max Holloway? Of course he will. Who wouldn't try and do that? You aren't going to stand and go toe-to-toe with Justin Gaethje because the man does have knockout power. But underestimate Paddy at your peril. That's all I'll say about that one, but that is a phenomenal fight.
Helwani tore the UFC's matchmaking to shreds, calling the interim title fight a meaningless placeholder that ignored rankings, merit, and competitive integrity. He couldn't believe Tsarukyan, the uncrowned top contender, wasn't even in the conversation. He pointed out that Topuria wasn't injured, wasn't sidelined, wasn't unavailable, so why force an interim belt? Helwani said the only thing making the fight feel legitimate was the star power of the names involved, not the logic of the division. And he wasn't done. He questioned why Pimblett versus Gaethje headlined over Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes, a fight many believe should have topped the card.
Is it more deserving people, whatnot? Whatever, you know, everyone knows that I'll fight anyone, right? So whoever they put in front of me, I'll do. But you know, there was them questions there, and then we're waiting. We're going to do Sydney because that's the only reason why I waited, because I thought it'd be December. But then they're like, I will give you Sydney. I'm like, all right, I'll wait for that. Then it was looking like it wasn't going to happen, but then it did happen, which was great. Yeah, but a lot happened. And obviously, again, I thought, you know, it was a Mobzar deserving, Lerone Murphy. I thought that were the 2 guys. They're the guys I called out. UFC really won Lopez, but at least you know, for at least everyone knows they're in for a treat. It's going to be a very exciting fight. You know, with your Mobzars and Lerones, you know, they're probably, yeah, they're more deserving. But you know, are they going to bring the fight like Lopez would? I think the fans are going to appreciate the fight that me and Lopez are going to have. But it is what it is. Whoever they put in front of me, let's go.
Stick around, because in the next segment, I'll reveal the UFC's hidden reasoning behind these controversial decisions, and it ties directly into another exploding division. Helwani claimed the UFC could have simply booked Topuria versus Tsarukyan later in the year and avoided this disaster entirely. Instead, the decision plunged Tsarukyan into limbo, while Pimblett and Gaethje stepped into a manufactured shortcut to a guaranteed title shot.
Alexander Volkanovski vs Diego Lopez 2 is a joke. So it was announced that Volk will be returning to defend his featherweight title against the man he beat in his last fight, Diego Lopez, and this is absolutely insane. Sure, Diego bounced back with a win in his last fight, but I still think he needs one more before getting another shot at the title, especially when we have legitimate contenders in Lerone Murphy and Movsar Evloev. I get that the UFC wanted Volk to headline this card since it'll be in Australia, and they also wanted to give him a more favorable matchup against someone he fought and defeated before, but this is truly ruining the featherweight division, which at one point used to be one of the best divisions. But Volk's second title reign has kind of ruined that, as he's not fighting the best guys, and he's also not fighting very often compared to before. But what do you think?
The UFC promised the winner a crack at Topuria, leaving Tsarukyan wondering what else he needed to do to earn respect. But the chaos didn't stop at lightweight. Featherweight was about to mirror the madness. Alexander Volkanovski, fresh off reclaiming his featherweight belt against Diego Lopez, wanted a quick turnaround, and he believed Lerone Murphy was the obvious next challenger. Murphy had just detonated Aaron Pico with a spinning elbow knockout that shook the division, but instead of rewarding merit, the UFC went off script again, pushing a rematch between Volkanovski and Lopez.
It just keeps getting better and better. Alexander Volkanovski is going to be defending his belt against Diego Lopez in the immediate rematch for Volk, since he hasn't fought actually since the first Lopez fight. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, I really do not like Lopez getting this title shot. Like, yeah, he's a fun, entertaining fighter. He's one of the most exciting fighters in the featherweight division, if not the most exciting, but yet you're going to give him an undeserved title shot off beating the number 10 ranked Gene Silva. Like, if since the first Volkanovski fight, if Diego went out and had like 2 or 3 fights since then sure, fair enough. I could maybe see him getting a title shot, but he's coming off one win against not even a top 5 ranked contender, where Mofsar is the clear number 1 contender, and instead they're making Volk defend the belt against the same guy. Like, the thing is with a fight like this is I have no reason to believe that anything's going to be different, right? It hasn't even been a year since their first fight yet. What changes is Diego Lopez going to make? It's going to be the exact same sort of stylistic fight. The only difference is that Volk's going to be a little bit older, potentially a little bit chinnier, maybe a little bit slower, and maybe Diego has improved a little bit. So it's going to make people think that Diego has a chance of winning. Let me tell you something. I think that Volkanovski is going to win the exact same way he did the first time. And that's because I haven't seen anything enough between these two guys to say that this fight's going to be drastically different, especially because it's been less than a year. So unless Volkanovski woke up and is like 80 years old now and can hardly move, and Diego Lopez has all of a sudden got the head movement of a prime Mike Tyson, then nah, bro. Nothing about this fight should change stylistically.
Volkanovski was surprised, but being the champion he is, he accepted without complaint. This is your second call to keep watching line in just a few lines. I'm exposing the reason the UFC rewarded Lopez over undefeated contenders, and it might be the most revealing moment of this entire story. Lopez defended his second title shot by saying fighters need to take big risks and accept tough matchups, claiming the UFC rewards those who step up instead of turning opportunities down. He hinted that some fighters were quietly refusing fights, implying that their hesitation was costing them their spot in line. Murphy, meanwhile, was devastated. The chance to fight one of the greatest featherweights alive had slipped through his fingers. He believed the UFC had stopped valuing accomplishments and shifted toward drawing power, a thought that made him question everything. And here's where the entire narrative snaps into focus. The chaos in lightweight mirrors the chaos in featherweight. Pimblett and Lopez aren't the top-ranked options, but they have momentum, attention, fan bases, and stories that sell. Tsarukyan and Murphy did everything right and got nothing. The UFC's message, intentional or not, is crystal clear. In modern MMA, attention is currency. Star power shapes matchups. Narrative beats merit. And if you're not the fighter fans can't stop talking about, the UFC will move on without you. So the final question is simple. Does this make the sport more exciting or more broken?